First Enoch tells how the Jews worshiped the Queen of Heaven. Images portray her as an angelic-like figure with wings. Deuteronomy forbade even looking up to the heavens, lest people worship these angels. And some believed it was because of the abandonment of the divine feminine that Jerusalem was lost. This version of history is also found in the Essene's Damascus document, which was the work of the refugee priests. The Damascus document makes clear that the priests returning to the rebuilt Temple of Solomon during the time of the Essenes were not from the original ascension wisdom tradition. Instead, they were Josiah's priests, if you will. They rebuilt the Temple of Solomon, and the Essenes had a problem with them and the way they were running things. They wanted their old-time wisdom tradition. They wanted their ascension teachings. After the destruction of the Essenes, these same Josiah priests, if you will, were responsible for rewriting Hebrew history and calling the Essenes heretics. In fact, all those who remembered the ascension wisdom teachings were labeled as heretics. We can begin to recover this spiritual tradition and early wisdom teachings by accounting for the items Josiah purged from the temple and or destroyed. We mentioned the Ark of the Covenant. But foremost is the Asherah, the symbol of the goddess Asherah, who is presented as an alien entity closely linked to the host of heaven. Asherah was the wife of El, the head of the Canaanite pantheon, and probably the mother of the gods in Canaanite and later Jewish tradition. Some literary evidence in ancient Israel even speaks of Asherah as the consort of the Old Testament God Yahweh himself. The removal of the Asherah, the symbol of this goddess, and its destruction is described in detail. Josiah took it to the valley of Kidron, burned it, beat it to dust or powder, and spread it over the common graves. When Josiah destroyed the Asherah, he also broke down the houses of the male cult prostitutes who were in the house of the Lord, the Temple of Solomon, where the women wove hangings for the Asherah. These cult prostitutes were actually angels, the women who wove the linen clothing of the angels. We can trace the Asherah to Egypt in the form of Hathor, who was called the Queen of Heaven and who was crowned with the moon. The Asherah poles are likely the same as the Hathor pillars of Egypt, especially those at Hathor's temple at Dendera, the temple of love and joy in Dendera. Dendera is the Greek name for the Egyptian Tanteret, which means she of the divine pillar. That name is a reference to the Tet pillar, this device or world tree. Hathor is Asherah, says the scholar William Deaver and other archaeologists, echoing a long-known fact known in goddess circles. In fact, he calls her Hathor Asherah, and on an Egyptian plaque she is listed as Kedushu, Hathor Asherah, Anat, and Astarte. They are all the same goddess. Kudshu is the Egyptian form of the word Kadesh, Kadesh, or Kadeshet. It means feminine holy one, or holiness in Hebrew, Canaanite, and Egyptian. In 1967, Raphael Patai was the first historian to mention that the ancient Israelites worshipped both Yahweh and Asherah. In his book, The Hebrew Goddess, he calculated that the statue of Asherah was present in the Temple of Solomon for no less than 236 years, 2/3 of the time the Solomonic Temple stood in Jerusalem. This worship, he asserts, was part of the legitimate religion approved and led by the king, the court, and the priesthood. King Solomon assuredly knew who or what Asherah denoted and of its origins in Egypt. And as Josiah learned, striking this goddess from the Israelite mind was not easy. The image of the Asherah would not go away, nor would the quest for ascension. What we have just learned from this incredible historical investigation is that there was once an alternative, a parallel mystery tradition based on the idea of human ascension, that it had its focus place at the Temple of Solomon, and that it was ultimately lost. This had the effect, in a way, of knocking humanity off its timeline. It's as if we knew for a very long time that our destiny was to ascend, that we had an understanding of the hosts of heaven, of extraterrestrial beings and of angels who were here to assist us. But then there was this changing of the gods, for whatever reason, and perhaps it has a benevolent purpose. We lost our connection to these stellar beings, to these star beings, and this understanding of our quest for perfection. Inserted in its place was a religion that has certainly benefited hundreds of millions of people. But within these religions of Judaism and Christianity, there are always these references to the old-time mysteries and to the mysteries of ascension. And the value in going on this quest is that we can reorient the human species. We can bring it back to its original ascension timeline, reach into the stars, and achieve our fullest destiny.